Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the interstellar transport ship Meridian, watching the blue-green marble of Kepler 442b grow larger through the reinforced viewport. Her small frame barely reached the shoulders of the towering Vorthak warriors who dominated the ship's corridors, and her quiet demeanor had earned her nothing but dismissive glances from the other species aboard. The Galactic Council had assembled this expedition as a test of unity between the major powers. Humans, the newest members of the galactic community, were included almost as an afterthought. Earth had been discovered only 3 years ago by a routine Vorthak scouting mission, and humanity's inclusion in galactic affairs was still viewed with skepticism by most alien races. "Look at the tiny human," growled Commander Thrax, a 8-foot-tall Vorthak with crimson scales and razor-sharp claws. His voice carried easily across the observation deck, causing several other aliens to turn and snicker. "Earth sends their weakest to represent them. Perhaps they wish to surrender before the mission even begins." Sarah ignored the comment as she had ignored countless others during the 3-week journey. The mission to Kepler 442b was supposed to be routine: establish a research outpost on the supposedly uninhabited world and conduct mineral surveys. The planet's readings showed rich deposits of rare elements crucial for faster-than-light travel, making it valuable to all the galactic powers. Dr. Zephyr, a crystalline Altarian scientist whose body resembled living diamond, approached Sarah with clicking footsteps. "Captain Chen," the being said in a voice like wind chimes, "I must express concern about your assignment to the advanced scouting team. Perhaps it would be more prudent for you to remain with the technical staff." Sarah finally turned from the viewport, her dark eyes meeting the Altarian's multifaceted gaze. "Dr. Zephyr, I appreciate your concern, but I was assigned to this mission for a reason. Earth's military recommended me specifically." The Altarian's crystalline form shifted slightly, a sign of confusion among their species. "But surely Earth has larger, more imposing warriors. Your stature is modest, compared to even our smallest combat specialists." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. "All expedition members report to Briefing Bay 7. We are approaching orbital insertion point," announced the ship's AI in multiple languages. The briefing bay was filled with representatives from 6 different species. The Vorthak dominated one section with their massive reptilian frames. The Altarians clustered together, their crystal bodies refracting the room's lights into rainbow patterns. Insectoid Krillians buzzed quietly among themselves, while the gaseous Netherians floated in their environmental suits. The Valdorians, tall and elegant with pale blue skin, stood with perfect posture near the front. Captain Morvac, the Vorthak expedition leader, stepped forward to address the assembly. His presence was intimidating, 9 feet of muscle and scales with battle scars crisscrossing his hide. "Warriors and scientists," he began, his voice booming across the chamber, "we are about to make history. Kepler 442b will become the first joint colony of the Galactic Council." He gestured to a holographic display showing the planet's surface. "Initial scans confirm the presence of massive trilithium deposits in the northern continent. However, we have detected some unusual energy signatures from the southern regions. These readings are inconsistent with known geological phenomena." A Krillian science officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "Commander, could these signatures indicate indigenous life forms?" "Our long-range scans suggested the planet was uninhabited." Morvac's yellow eyes narrowed. "Possible, but unlikely. The energy patterns are too regular, too structured. We suspect they may be ancient technological remnants from a long-dead civilization. Regardless, we proceed as planned." Sarah studied the holographic data carefully. Something about the energy patterns bothered her, but she couldn't quite identify what. The signatures appeared in perfect geometric arrangements across the southern continent, almost like a vast network or grid system. "Scouting teams will deploy in 6 hours," Morvac continued. "Each team will consist of 1 representative from each species, ensuring equal participation in the discovery process." His gaze fell on Sarah, and his expression became mocking. "Team 5 will investigate the energy anomalies in the southern continent. Captain Chen will accompany this mission." Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. Team 5 was clearly considered the most dangerous assignment, and many assumed it was a way to eliminate the human representative without appearing overtly hostile. Thrax stepped forward, his claws clicking against the metal floor. Commander Morvac, with respect, perhaps the human should remain on the ship. The southern continent presents unknown dangers, and humans are fragile. Sarah felt dozens of alien eyes upon her, most filled with pity or amusement. She had endured 3 weeks of subtle insults and dismissive treatment, but this was different. This was a direct challenge to humanity's place in the galactic community. "I'll take the assignment," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent chamber. "Earth sent me here to represent humanity's interests, and that's exactly what I intend to do." Dr. Zephyr's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been concern. "Captain Chen, the other team members are all experienced in dangerous environments. Perhaps, Sarah interrupted gently. "You should let me worry about my own capabilities." Morvac nodded approvingly, though his expression suggested he was pleased by what he saw as Sarah's inevitable failure. "Very well. Team 5 will consist of Captain Chen, Warrior Kozak of the Vorthak, Scientist Thys of the Krillians, Netherian Ambassador Vex, and Tactical Specialist Lyra of the Valdorians." As the briefing concluded and the various species dispersed to prepare for planetary insertion, Sarah remained behind to study the holographic data more closely. The energy patterns continued to trouble her, and she pulled up additional scans on her personal tablet. The geometric precision of the signatures was remarkable, too precise for natural phenomena, but also unlike any known alien technology in the galactic databases. Each energy source appeared to be exactly 12.7 kilometers from its nearest neighbors, forming perfect hexagonal grids across vast areas of the southern continent. Studying our destination, human, Sarah turned to find Warrior Kozak approaching. The Vorthak was smaller than Thrax, but still imposing, with dark green scales and intelligent amber eyes. Unlike his commander, Kozak's tone held curiosity rather than mockery. "The energy patterns are unusual," Sarah replied, showing him her tablet. "They're too organized to be natural, but they don't match any known technological signatures." Kozak studied the data, his reptilian features thoughtful. "You see patterns others miss. This is unexpected. Most humans we have encountered think in simple terms: food, shelter, reproduction. You analyze like a warrior." Sarah smiled slightly. "Humans might surprise you, Warrior Kozak. We're more complex than we appear." The Vorthak's amber eyes fixed on her with new interest. "Perhaps, but complexity means nothing without strength to back it up. The southern continent will test more than your analytical skills. Captain Chen, I hope for your sake that humans are as resilient as they are curious." As Sarah prepared to leave the briefing bay, she caught sight of Earth through one of the portholes, a tiny blue dot now impossibly far away. In a few hours, she would set foot on an alien world as humanity's representative, facing unknown dangers with creatures who viewed her species as weak and inferior. She thought of her training, of the countless hours spent in simulation chambers and combat scenarios. Earth's military had chosen her not despite her quiet nature, but because of it. Sometimes the greatest strength lay in being underestimated. The planet below held secrets that would soon be revealed, and Sarah Chen was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon had never been size or intimidation. It was adaptability, ingenuity, and the fierce determination to protect what mattered most. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were truly capable of when pushed to their limits. The descent pod shuddered violently as it pierced Kepler 442b's atmosphere, its heat shields glowing cherry red against the alien sky. Sarah gripped her restraints tightly, watching the landscape rush up to meet them through the small viewport. The southern continent spread below like a vast patchwork of purple vegetation and silver rivers. Beautiful and utterly foreign, Tactical Specialist Lyra sat across from her, the Valdorian's pale blue skin maintaining its characteristic calm composure, despite the rough entry. Her elongated fingers danced across a tactical display, monitoring the pod's descent trajectory. "Atmospheric composition is within acceptable parameters for all species," she announced in her melodious voice. "Landing in 30 seconds. Scientist Thys, the Krillian team member, buzzed nervously in the corner. Her insectoid form was compact but efficient, with forearms that allowed her to operate multiple instruments simultaneously. "Energy readings are intensifying as we approach the surface," she chittered through her translator. "Whatever is generating these signatures is powerful." Warrior Kozak checked his massive plasma rifle for the third time since departure. The Vorthak's amber eyes swept continuously between his teammates and the approaching ground. Stay alert. Unknown energy sources often mean unknown threats. Ambassador Vex, the Netherian, floated silently in his environmental suit. His gaseous form shifted continuously within the containment field, and his translated voice carried an ethereal quality. The atmospheric disturbances suggest active technology rather than dormant ruins. We may not be alone on this world. The pod touched down with a bone-jarring impact, its landing struts sinking slightly into the soft alien soil. Through the viewports, Sarah could see they had landed in a clearing surrounded by towering trees that resembled purple-barked redwoods, their canopy filtering the light from Kepler 442b's twin suns into dancing patterns. Environmental suits required for all species except Valdorians and Krillians, Lyra announced as the team prepared to disembark. Atmospheric pressure is slightly elevated, and while oxygen levels are adequate, there are trace compounds of unknown toxicity. Sarah sealed her helmet and ran through her equipment checklist. Her human-designed gear looked primitive compared to the advanced technology carried by her teammates, but it was reliable and familiar. She carried a standard pulse rifle, basic scientific instruments, and a survival pack that had been designed for Earth's most hostile environments. The pod's exit ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, and the team stepped onto alien soil for the first time. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard, making each step feel bouncy and uncertain. Strange scents filtered through their environmental systems, something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. Remarkable, Theus buzzed, immediately beginning to scan the local flora with her instruments. These plant structures show characteristics of both Earth and Altarian vegetation. Convergent evolution across multiple star systems. Kozak moved with practiced military precision, his rifle ready as he established a defensive perimeter around the landing site. Pretty plants can wait, scientist. First priority is threat assessment. Lyra was already consulting her tactical display, overlaying the energy signature data with their current position. The nearest energy source is approximately 2 kilometers northeast. The readings are stronger now that we're on the surface, definitely artificial in origin. Sarah pulled out her own scanner and immediately noticed something her teammates had missed. The electromagnetic patterns are pulsing in a regular rhythm, she observed, every 4.7 seconds like a heartbeat. Ambassador Vex's gaseous form swirled with interest. Heartbeat implies life, but at this scale we would be dealing with something enormous. The team began their trek through the alien forest with Kozak taking point and Sarah bringing up the rear. The purple trees rose hundreds of feet above them, their trunks so massive that it would take a dozen people holding hands to encircle them. Strange bird-like creatures flitted between the branches, their calls creating an alien symphony. As they walked, Sarah noticed details that seemed to escape her companions. The tree placement wasn't random. They formed subtle patterns that guided movement in specific directions. The spacing between trunks created natural pathways that led steadily toward their destination. It was as if the forest itself had been designed to funnel visitors toward the energy sources. The local wildlife shows no fear of our presence, Thys observed, watching a group of deer-like creatures graze peacefully nearby. Either they have no natural predators or they don't recognize us as threats. Or, Sarah said quietly, they're used to visitors. The comment caught Kozak's attention. Explain, human, Sarah gestured to the grazing animals. On Earth, wild animals are instinctively wary of anything unfamiliar. These creatures are either completely isolated from predators, which is evolutionarily unlikely, or they've learned that bipedal visitors don't pose a threat. Lyra's elegant features showed surprise. You suggest this world has had previous contact with tool-using species? I'm suggesting we keep our options open, Sarah replied diplomatically. They pressed deeper into the forest, and the energy readings grew stronger with each step. Sarah began to notice other subtle signs of artificial design, stones arranged in two perfect spirals, clearings that formed geometric shapes when viewed from above, streams that flowed in unnaturally straight lines before resuming their natural meandering. The electromagnetic pulse is accelerating, Thys announced, consulting her instruments. Now every 3.8 seconds, it's responding to our approach. Ambassador Vex's form shimmered with concern. If the system is reacting to us, it may be preparing defensive measures. We should consider retreating and calling for backup. Kozak growled dismissively. Retreat? We are warriors and scientists of the Galactic Council. We did not travel across the stars to be frightened by energy readings. Sarah was studying her scanner when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The pulse isn't just accelerating, she said urgently. It's synchronizing. All the energy sources across the continent are beginning to pulse in unison. The team stopped abruptly, the implications sinking in. If the energy sources were communicating across vast distances, they were dealing with technology far more advanced than anything in the Galactic Council's databases. How is that possible? Lyra demanded. Instantaneous communication across continental distances requires quantum entanglement networks or subspace relay systems. Both technologies are beyond anything we detected in our orbital scans. Sarah was about to respond when the forest around them suddenly fell silent. The alien bird call stopped. The rustling of small creatures ceased, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The only sound was the gentle hum of their equipment and the rapid beating of her own heart. Then through the trees ahead, they saw it. A structure emerged from the forest like something from a dream. It appeared to be grown rather than built, its organic curves rising seamlessly from the purple soil. The material looked like crystallized wood, translucent and shot through with veins of pulsing blue light that matched the electromagnetic signatures they had been tracking. By the great void, Vex whispered, his gaseous form swirling frantically within his suit. It's alive. The structure was massive, easily 300 feet tall and equally wide, shaped like an enormous flower bud about to bloom. The blue light within its walls pulsed rhythmically, and Sarah realized they were looking at the source of the Continental Energy Network. Thys's instruments were clicking frantically as she tried to analyze the structure. Biomechanical hybrid construction. The energy patterns suggest both biological neural networks and technological amplification systems. This is beyond anything in our xenoarchaeology databases. Kozak raised his rifle instinctively, though he clearly had no idea what he might be aiming at. Is it hostile? Before anyone could answer, the structure began to change. The bud-like top slowly unfurled like a time-lapse flower, revealing an interior chamber filled with soft, welcoming light. The pulsing blue veins shifted to a warm golden color, and suddenly the air filled with a sound like distant music. It's beautiful, Lyra breathed, her usual tactical composure momentarily forgotten. Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. As she moved closer to the structure, her scanner began picking up complex harmonic patterns in the energy output. The rhythms were mathematical but somehow familiar, like an equation expressed as music. Captain Chen, I strongly advise against approaching the structure, Ambassador Vex urged. We don't understand its purpose or capabilities. But Sarah was already analyzing the patterns, her mind racing to decode the mathematical relationships. The harmonics were based on prime number sequences, but modified in ways that suggested advanced understanding of quantum mechanics and dimensional theory. It's not just a structure, she said with growing excitement. It's a message. The energy patterns, the harmonic frequencies. It's a mathematical language designed to be understood by any species with advanced scientific knowledge. Kozak's grip on his rifle tightened. Messages can be traps, human. Your curiosity may doom us all. Sarah turned to face her teammates, her eyes bright with understanding. Sarah approached the living structure with careful, measured steps, her scanner held before her like a shield. The mathematical equations dancing in the translucent walls grew more complex as she drew nearer, shifting from basic prime numbers to advanced theories of multidimensional physics that pushed the boundaries of her understanding. Captain Chen, this is inadvisable, Lyra called out, her usually calm Valdorian voice tight with concern. We should establish communication with the expedition ship before proceeding. No time, Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the swirling patterns of light. The structure is adapting its message to our presence. If we delay, we might miss our opportunity to understand what it's trying to communicate. Kozak positioned himself between Sarah and the structure, his massive frame casting a shadow across the golden light. Human, your species' reputation for reckless curiosity is proving accurate. This could be a weapon system preparing to activate. Sarah paused just outside the structure's entrance, studying the warrior's concerned expression. Despite his intimidating appearance, she could see genuine worry in his amber eyes. Kozak, look at the mathematical progressions. This isn't a weapon, it's a teaching device. Someone is trying to show us something. Thais buzzed nervously as her instruments detected new energy patterns. The harmonic frequencies are entering ranges that affect neural activity. All species present are registering increased brain activity in regions associated with pattern recognition and mathematical processing. Ambassador Vex's gaseous form swirled more rapidly within his containment suit. An alien technology that directly influences neural patterns? This is extremely dangerous. We must retreat immediately. But Sarah was already stepping into the structure's welcoming embrace. The moment she crossed the threshold, the world around her exploded into understanding. The mathematical equations weren't just displays. They were direct knowledge transfer, concepts flowing into her mind with crystal clarity. She saw the history of Kepler 442b unfold in mathematical metaphors. The planet had once been home to an ancient species called the architects, beings of pure intellectual energy who had transcended physical form millions of years ago. Before departing for higher dimensions, they had left behind this testing ground, a way to evaluate younger species that might one day be ready to join them in their evolved state. The knowledge came in waves, each more complex than the last. The architects had seeded dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy with similar structures, waiting for species to develop the intellectual sophistication necessary to understand their message. Most species never progressed beyond basic energy detection. A few managed to approach the structures but were too aggressive or too fearful to make contact. Humanity was the first species to attempt true communication with the testing system. Sarah, Kozak's voice seemed to come from very far away. The human is unresponsive. The structure has done something to her mind, but Sarah was drowning in revelation. The architect's message continued, showing her the galaxy as they had seen it. Billions of species trapped in cycles of warfare and territorial expansion, never evolving beyond their primitive instincts for competition and dominance. The testing structures were designed to identify species with the potential for true intellectual and spiritual growth. The test was simple in concept, but devastating in its implications. Could a species recognize intelligence that was fundamentally different from their own, and would they respond with curiosity or aggression? Humanity had passed the first phase by approaching with scientific instruments rather than weapons, by seeking to understand rather than destroy. But the real test was yet to come. Through the mathematical interface, Sarah began to understand that the Continental Energy Network wasn't just a communication system. It was a vast computational matrix capable of simulating entire civilizations. The architects used it to run predictive models of species development, testing how different races might evolve over millions of years. And according to their calculations, humanity had the highest probability of achieving transcendence of any species they had ever tested. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity, dismissed by the galactic community as weak and primitive, was actually the most promising species the architects had encountered in millions of years of testing. The very qualities that other races saw as weaknesses, curiosity over aggression, cooperation over competition, adaptability over rigid hierarchy, were exactly what the architects had been looking for. But the test wasn't over. The computational matrix was now running real-time simulations of humanity's future, and the results were troubling. In most scenarios, contact with the galactic community led to humanity being suppressed or destroyed by more aggressive species. Only in a small percentage of outcomes did humanity survive long enough to reach its full potential. Sarah realized with growing horror that her teammates were part of the test. The architects were evaluating not just humanity's potential, but how other species would react to that potential once it was revealed. The human appears to be in some form of neural link with the structure, Lyra reported, her tactical training taking over as she analyzed the situation. Her vital signs are stable, but her brainwave patterns are unlike anything in our medical databases. Kozak moved closer to the structure's entrance, his weapon lowered but ready. Should we attempt extraction? Negative, Thais chittered, her instruments detecting dangerous energy buildups. The structure is channeling massive amounts of power through the neural link. Severing the connection abruptly could cause permanent brain damage. Inside the mathematical consciousness of the structure, Sarah was fighting a different kind of battle. The architect's knowledge was overwhelming, threatening to wash away her individual identity in its vastness. She could feel her sense of self fragmenting under the weight of millions of years of accumulated wisdom, but her human stubbornness the same quality that had allowed her species to survive. Ice ages and asteroid impacts refused to yield. She held on to her memories of Earth, of her training, of the faces of her teammates outside the structure. She was Sarah Chen, human, and no amount of alien knowledge would change that. The struggle seemed to amuse the architect consciousness. Fascinating, came a thought that wasn't quite words. Most species either reject our knowledge entirely or are consumed by it. You adapt and integrate while maintaining your core identity. This is unprecedented. Sarah focused her thoughts into a coherent response. We're good at adapting. It's how we survived long enough to reach the stars. Indeed, your species shows remarkable resilience, but adaptation alone is insufficient. The true test begins now. The mathematical environment around Sarah suddenly shifted, showing her real-time images of her teammates outside the structure. She could see their growing concern, their defensive postures, their weapons held ready for use. Your companions represent the galactic status quo, the architect explained. Aggressive, hierarchical species that view strength in terms of physical dominance and technological superiority. They do not understand that true evolution requires transcendence of such primitive concepts. Sarah watched Kozak pace nervously at the structure's entrance, his massive frame tense with barely controlled energy. Lyra was consulting her tactical displays, no doubt preparing contingency plans for various threat scenarios. Even Thys and Vex, despite being scientists and diplomats, showed clear signs of suspicion and fear. They will attempt to suppress your species' development, the architect continued. Not from malice, but from instinctive fear of being superseded. This has occurred with every promising species we have tested. The galactic community destroys what it cannot understand or control. The implications were staggering. Humanity's inclusion in the Galactic Council wasn't an honor. It was a trap. The other species would monitor human development and intervene whenever humanity showed signs of true advancement. However, the architect's thoughts took on a different tone. Our analysis suggests your species possesses one advantage that previous candidates lacked. Humans excel at forming alliances across species barriers. You have the potential to change the galactic community from within, if you can survive the initial suppression attempts. Sarah felt the weight of her species' future pressing down on her. Everything humanity might become depended on the choices made in the next few moments. Outside the structure, she could see her teammates growing more agitated. Soon they would decide that she had been compromised and take action to rescue her. The test concludes now, the architect announced. You must choose. Accept our knowledge and face the consequences, or reject it and return to ignorance. But know that this choice will determine not only your fate, but the fate of every human who will ever live. Sarah closed her eyes and thought of Earth, its blue oceans, its diverse life forms, its billions of people looking up at the stars with wonder and hope. Whatever happened next, she would not let her species face the future blind and defenseless. I accept, she thought clearly. Give me the knowledge. All of it. The architect consciousness paused, and Sarah sensed something like surprise in the ancient intelligence. All of it? Few biological minds can survive complete knowledge transfer. You risk losing yourself entirely. Sarah smiled grimly. Then I guess we'll find out just how tough humans really are. Sarah emerged from the structure with movements that seemed both familiar and utterly alien. Her teammates watched in stunned silence as she walked toward them, her eyes holding depths of knowledge that hadn't been there moments before. The structure behind her gradually dimmed its golden light and began to fold back into its dormant bud configuration. Captain Chen, Lyra said carefully, her hand hovering near her sidearm. Please report your status. You've been unresponsive for 17 minutes. Sarah smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Kozak's scales ripple with unease. I'm fine, Lyra. Better than fine, actually. I've just received the most comprehensive education in galactic history ever administered to a biological mind. Thys's mandibles clicked nervously as her instruments detected massive changes in Sarah's neural patterns. Impossible. The human brain lacks the capacity for large-scale knowledge integration. The energy readings suggest you've absorbed information equivalent to several planetary databases. The human brain is more adaptable than you realize, Sarah replied, and her voice carried new harmonics that seemed to resonate in frequencies their translators couldn't quite capture. It turns out we're rather good at handling the impossible. Ambassador Vex's gaseous form swirled anxiously within his containment suit. What did the structure tell you? What was its purpose? Sarah looked at each of her teammates in turn, and they could see her evaluating them with an intelligence that felt suddenly alien despite her familiar appearance. It told me the truth about this galaxy, about the species that inhabit it, and about humanity's place in the cosmic order. Kozak stepped forward, his massive frame blocking Sarah's path. Speak plainly, human. What truth? The truth that you're all terrified of, Sarah said simply. That humanity isn't the weak, primitive species you believe us to be. We're the next stage of galactic evolution, and deep down, every one of your species knows it. The words hit the team like a physical blow. Lyra's tactical training kicked in automatically, her hand moving to her weapon. Captain Chen, I believe the alien technology has compromised your mental state. You're exhibiting symptoms of megalomania consistent with neural manipulation. Sarah laughed, and the sound carried undertones that made the alien forest around them seem to hold its breath. Megalomania? No, Lyra, just clarity. The architects left these structures to test developing species. Do you know how many races have passed their evaluation over the past 1,000,000 years? Enlighten us, Vex said, though his tone suggested he didn't really want to know. 7, Sarah replied. 7 species out of thousands tested. And do you know what happened to those 7 promising races? Kozak's amber eyes narrowed dangerously. Continue. They were systematically destroyed by the galactic community whenever they showed signs of true advancement. Not through open warfare, that would be too obvious. Through economic sanctions, technological embargoes, political isolation, and when necessary, convenient accidents that eliminated their most brilliant minds. Theis's instruments were detecting massive energy buildups from all around them as the continental network began, responding to Sarah's transformed consciousness. The energy signatures are multiplying. Every structure on the continent is activating simultaneously. Sarah nodded as if she had expected this. The architects designed their network to respond to consciousness that has successfully integrated their knowledge. What you're seeing is the planet's defense system coming online. Defense against what? Lyra demanded, her weapon now openly drawn though she hadn't yet aimed it. Against the suppression protocols that your species will undoubtedly attempt once you report humanity's true potential to the Galactic Council, Sarah said matter-of-factly. The architects have run the simulations thousands of times. Within 72 hours of your return, there will be a coordinated effort to eliminate humanity before we can develop beyond your ability to control. Kozak's patience finally snapped. Enough of this madness, he roared, raising his plasma rifle. The alien technology has corrupted your mind, human. Stand down immediately. Sarah looked at the massive weapon pointed at her chest with calm interest. Are you going to shoot me, Kozak? That would certainly prove my point about galactic society's response to threats they don't understand. You are no longer the human we departed with, the Vorthak warrior growled. You have been compromised by hostile alien technology. Protocol demands your neutralization. Protocol? Sarah mused. Yes, that's exactly the problem. Your entire civilization is built on protocols designed to maintain the status quo. No real growth, no genuine evolution, just endless cycles of territorial expansion and resource competition. The energy buildup around them reached critical levels, and suddenly the forest was alive with light. Structures began emerging from the ground throughout the area, not the graceful, organic forms they had seen before, but angular, aggressive configurations that hummed with barely contained power. Defensive perimeter, Lyra shouted, her tactical training overriding her confusion. Unknown hostiles emerging from multiple vectors. But Sarah raised her hand and impossibly, the structures stopped their emergence and held position. They're not hostiles, Lyra. They're responding to my consciousness because I've been accepted as a guardian of architect knowledge. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? This was frantically scanning the new structures with her instruments. These configurations are weapons platforms. Energy output readings are beyond anything in our technology databases. One of these structures could vaporize our entire expedition ship. Correct, Sarah confirmed. The architects were peaceful, but they weren't naive. They knew that knowledge without the means to protect it was worthless. Each testing world is equipped with defensive capabilities that activate only when a species passes their evaluation. Ambassador Vex's form was cycling through agitated patterns within his suit. You're threatening the entire expedition. This is an act of war against the Galactic Council. No, Sarah corrected gently. This is an act of self-defense against a galactic community that would destroy humanity rather than allow us to evolve. The architect's records are very clear about how this plays out. You'll return to your ships, report that Earth represents a potential threat, and within months there will be a coordinated peacekeeping operation to contain human expansion. Kozak's rifle remained trained on Sarah, but his expression showed growing uncertainty. You speak of conspiracy theories and ancient aliens. Where is your proof? Sarah gestured to the weapon platforms surrounding them. The proof is all around you. These structures have been dormant for millions of years, waiting for a species capable of understanding their purpose. They've awakened now because humanity has passed a test that your species never even attempted. What test? Lyra demanded, though her tactical display was showing increasingly dire readings as more defensive structures emerged from the forest floor. The test of genuine curiosity over fear, Sarah explained. When the Vorthak first encountered these energy readings, what was their immediate response? Military assessment and threat evaluation. When the Krillians detected the patterns, they focused on resource extraction potential. The Valdorians saw strategic advantages. The Netherians worried about territorial implications. Sarah's gaze swept across her teammates. But humans? We wanted to understand. We approached with scientific instruments, not weapons. We sought communication, not conquest. That simple difference in mindset is what separates us from every other species in this galaxy. Thais lowered her scanning equipment, her compound eyes reflecting the light from the surrounding weapon platforms. The energy patterns, they weren't random after all. They were designed to attract specific types of investigation. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. The architects created a filter. Aggressive species would detect the energy signatures as potential threats or resources and approach with military force. Only species with genuine scientific curiosity would recognize the patterns as mathematical communication and respond appropriately. Ambassador Vex's gaseous form had stopped its agitated swirling. But if this is true, if humanity truly possesses such unique potential, why hide it? Why not share this knowledge with the galactic community? Sarah's expression grew sad. Because the galactic community isn't ready for it. Your civilizations are built on hierarchies of power, on the assumption that strength equals worth. The idea that a small, physically weak species might be more evolved than your mighty empires is literally incomprehensible to most galactic minds. Kozak slowly lowered his weapon, his warrior instincts recognizing a truth he didn't want to accept. The human speaks of evolution, but what I see is arrogance. You claim superiority while surrounded by weapons of mass destruction. I'm not claiming superiority, Sarah replied. I'm accepting responsibility. The architect's knowledge comes with obligations. I now know the locations of every testing world in the galaxy, the technological specifications for consciousness transfer systems, and the mathematical principles underlying dimensional transcendence. More importantly, I know which species have the potential for growth and which are trapped in evolutionary dead ends. The implications of her words struck the team like a physical blow. Lyra was the first to speak. The first bombardment struck the planet's upper atmosphere like a hammer blow, sending shockwaves through the quantum fields that surrounded Kepler 442b. Sarah felt the impact through her connection to the architect network, each explosion registering as a violation against the ancient systems that had slumbered peacefully for millions of years. They're not even attempting communication, Lyra observed, her tactical displays showing the systematic targeting patterns of the approaching Galactic Council ships. Standard sterilization protocol. Eliminate all traces of unknown technology before investigation. Kozak's amber eyes reflected the growing light from the weapon platforms around them. How many ships? 3 heavy cruisers, Lyra replied grimly. Full battle configuration. The Dominion's Edge, the Stellar Fist, and the Righteous Fury. Combined firepower sufficient to crack a planet's crust. Sarah's consciousness was partially merged with the defensive network, allowing her to perceive the approaching threat with senses beyond normal human experience. She could feel the malevolent intent of the ship's targeting systems, the cold calculations of their AI weapon platforms, the grim determination of their crews. The fleet commander is Admiral Thexkar, she announced, her voice carrying harmonics that made her teammates' communication equipment resonate. Vorthak military. veteran of 17 suppression campaigns. His orders are to eliminate all traces of anomalous technological development and classify the mission as resource denial against unknown hostiles. Theis's mandibles clicked in disbelief. You can read their communications. From this distance? The Architect network extends throughout this solar system, Sarah explained. Every asteroid, every ice chunk, every particle of cosmic dust has been seeded with monitoring devices. The galaxy thinks it understands physics, but the architects operated on principles that transcend normal space-time limitations. Ambassador Vex's gaseous form was cycling through patterns of distress. If the network is that extensive, why hasn't it been detected before? Because it exists in dimensional phases slightly offset from normal reality, Sarah replied. Like looking at a three-dimensional object from a two-dimensional perspective, you can see evidence of its presence, but not its true nature. The second wave of bombardment struck with increased intensity, probing for defensive responses. The weapon platforms around them hummed with anticipation, their energy cores building to discharge levels that would have impressed the architects themselves. Sarah, Kozak said urgently, if you're going to act, it must be now. Those ships will achieve orbital bombardment position within minutes. Sarah closed her eyes and felt the vast weight of decision settling on her shoulders. Through the network, she could sense the entire galactic civilization. Billions of worlds, trillions of beings, all trapped in cycles of expansion and conflict that prevented true evolution. The knowledge she now possessed could free them all, but only if humanity survived long enough to share it. I'm sorry, she whispered, though it wasn't clear who she was addressing. But sometimes the only way to prove you're not weak is to show them exactly how strong you really are. The transformation began with Sarah herself. The architect knowledge flowing through her consciousness started to manifest physically, her human form beginning to resonate with energies that existed beyond normal perception. Her teammates watched in awe and terror as she became something more than human without ceasing to be human at all. Planetary Defense Network. This is Guardian Sarah Chen, she announced, her voice now carrying across multiple dimensional frequencies. Authorization Architect Protocol 77 Alpha. Threat Assessment. Multiple hostile vessels approaching with intent to destroy protected sites. Response level. Demonstrate superiority without initiating casualties. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every structure on the continent suddenly blazed with light as the defense network activated to full readiness. The weapon platforms around them shifted into firing configurations that violated several laws of physics, their forms extending into dimensions the eye couldn't quite follow. In orbit, Admiral Thexkar was receiving reports that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups across the entire southern continent. Weapon signatures unlike anything in our databases. Impossible, the Admiral growled from the bridge of the Dominion's edge. Our surveys showed no evidence of advanced civilization. Continue bombardment. The response came from every structure on the planet simultaneously. Beams of coherent energy lanced upward from the surface, not as weapons of destruction but as demonstrations of capability. Each beam struck the approaching ship's shields with precisely calculated force, enough to overload their defensive systems and send them tumbling through space, but carefully modulated to avoid causing casualties. What in the name of the Great Void? Admiral Thexkar stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. 3 of the most powerful warships in the galactic fleet had been swatted aside like insects by energy beams that appeared to emerge from solid rock. On the planet's surface, Sarah was coordinating the defensive response through her connection to the Architect network. Each beam was precisely targeted, each energy pulse carefully calculated. The message was clear: we can destroy you whenever we choose, but we prefer not to. Guardian Chen, came a voice through the quantum communication system. This is Admiral Thexkar of the Galactic Council Defense Force. Identify yourself and explain the source of these defensive capabilities. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at her teammates, seeing in their expressions the dawning realization that everything had changed. This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. I am speaking as the authorized representative of humanity and as a guardian of architect knowledge. Your unprovoked attack on a peaceful research expedition has been noted and will be reported to appropriate authorities. The silence that followed stretched across light years as the implications sank in. The small, weak human had just announced herself as the wielder of technology that could reshape galactic civilization. Kozak was the first to find his voice. "Human, Sarah, what have you done?" "What I had to do," Sarah replied, her consciousness slowly returning to normal human levels while maintaining her connection to the network. "I've announced humanity's presence on the galactic stage in a way that can't be ignored or suppressed." Lyra was frantically analyzing the tactical situation. "The fleet is regrouping. They're calling for reinforcements. This will bring every major power in the galaxy here within days." "Good," Sarah said calmly. "It's time for the galaxy to learn that evolution isn't about who has the biggest weapons or the most territory. It's about who has the courage to grow beyond their limitations." Theiss was studying the energy pattern still radiating from the planetary defense network. "The technology you've activated, it's beyond anything we thought possible. How do you control something so powerful?" "I don't control it," Sarah explained. "I partner with it. The architects designed their systems to work with consciousness, not to dominate it. It's a concept most galactic civilizations can't grasp, because they're built on hierarchies of power rather than collaboration." Ambassador Vex had been silent throughout the exchange, but now his gaseous form shifted into patterns that indicated deep contemplation. "Captain Chen, you've just fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. Every species will now see humanity as either a threat to be eliminated or an ally to be courted. Or," Sarah said with a slight smile, "as teachers to be learned from. The architect knowledge isn't meant to be hoarded by one species. It's meant to be shared with any consciousness ready to evolve beyond aggression and fear." The communication system crackled again as Admiral Thexakar attempted to reassert control. "Captain Chen, you are in violation of 17 Galactic Council regulations regarding the deployment of unauthorized weapon systems. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." Sarah's response carried the authority of millions of years of accumulated wisdom. "Admiral Thexakar, you are in violation of far more fundamental laws: the rights of developing species to exist without interference, and the principle that knowledge belongs to all consciousness capable of using it wisely. Your threats are noted and dismissed." Kozak looked around at the weapon platforms that still surrounded them, their forms now settled into configurations that suggested watchful waiting rather than active threat. "What happens now?" "The galaxy will never accept humanity's sudden rise to power." "They don't have to accept it," Sarah replied. "They just have to learn to live with it. And perhaps eventually they'll learn from it." The architect's greatest hope was that someday a species would arise that could teach the galaxy how to evolve beyond its primitive instincts. She gestured to the structures around them, their surfaces now glowing with gentle, welcoming light. "This is just the beginning. There are testing sites on dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. Each one contains knowledge that could revolutionize how we understand consciousness, reality, and our place in the cosmos." Lyra's tactical display was showing new contacts entering the system, not just reinforcements for Admiral Thexakar, but ships from every major galactic power. 6 months later, the Galactic Council chambers had never seen anything like the assembly that now filled its vast halls. Representatives from over 200 species clustered in nervous groups, their attention focused on the small human woman, who stood at the center podium without need for the intimidation platforms typically used by smaller species. Sarah. Chen looked exactly as she had on Kepler 442b, but everyone present could feel the vast intelligence that now resided behind her familiar human features. The architect knowledge had not changed her appearance, but it had transformed her into something that transcended normal categories of biological classification. "Honored representatives," Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber without amplification. "6 months ago, your fleets came to Kepler 442b with the intention of destroying what you didn't understand. Today, we gather to discuss the future of galactic civilization." The Vorthak delegation, led by Admiral Thexakar himself, shifted uncomfortably in their reinforced seating. The Admiral's defeat at Kepler 442b had not diminished his standing. If anything, surviving an encounter with architect technology had elevated his reputation among his warrior people. "Captain Chen," Admiral Thexakar spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "The Galactic Council acknowledges that humanity has acquired significant defensive capabilities. However, the sudden appearance of such technology raises questions about your species' intentions. Sarah smiled, and several representatives instinctively reached for their panic buttons before remembering that violence was prohibited in the council chambers. Our intentions are the same as they've always been, Admiral. We seek knowledge, growth, and peaceful coexistence with our galactic neighbors. Peaceful coexistence with planet-killing weapons at your disposal? Challenged Representative Zixara of the Altarians, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into hostile patterns. The defensive network has never harmed a single being, Sarah replied calmly. Every demonstration of its capabilities has been carefully modulated to disable, rather than destroy. We could have vaporized your fleets, but we chose to simply send them tumbling through space with bruised egos and overloaded power systems. Thais, who had been granted special permission to address the assembly, stepped forward on her insectoid legs. Honored representatives, I was present during humanity's first contact with the architect technology. I can testify that Captain Chen showed remarkable restraint in a situation where most species would have responded with overwhelming force. The Krillian speaks truth, Ambassador Vex added, his gaseous form shimmering within its containment field. The humans demonstrated scientific curiosity where we showed fear, cooperation where we showed suspicion, and wisdom where we showed aggression. Kozak rose from the Vorthak section, his massive frame drawing attention throughout the chamber. As a warrior of the Vorthak Empire, I am trained to recognize strength in all its forms. What I witnessed on Kepler 442b was not the weakness we assumed humanity possessed, but a form of strength my people had never encountered before. The chamber buzzed with translated conversations as representatives tried to process the implications of multiple species. Vouching for humanity's character, the original expedition team had become unlikely ambassadors for human potential, their testimony carrying weight precisely because they represented the species most likely to view humans as threats. The question before us, Sarah continued, is not whether humanity deserves a place in galactic civilization. We've already claimed that place through our actions. The question is whether galactic civilization is ready to evolve beyond its current limitations. She gestured, and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing star maps with hundreds of highlighted systems. There are architect testing sites throughout the galaxy. Most have been dormant for millions of years, waiting for species with the proper combination of intelligence and wisdom to activate them. The displays shifted to show detailed scans of various worlds, each marked with the characteristic energy signatures of ancient technology. Representatives leaned forward in their seats, recognizing systems within their own territories. Some of you already know about these sites, Sarah observed. The Valdorian Empire has been studying one for over a century without making contact. The Netherian Collective has 3 sites in their territory that they've classified as anomalous energy sources. The Altarian Republic has been running archaeological expeditions to 2 sites for decades. Representative Litheris of the Valdorians, her pale blue features showing elegant alarm, spoke carefully. Are you suggesting that our research efforts have been inadequate? I'm suggesting that you've been approaching the sites with the wrong mindset, Sarah replied gently. The architects designed their tests to identify species capable of transcending competitive instincts. Most galactic civilizations approach unknown technology as either a resource to be exploited or a threat to be neutralized. Neither response demonstrates the intellectual humility necessary for true advancement. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Dozens of species had encountered architect technology, but failed to recognize it for what it was because their fundamental assumptions about the universe prevented them from seeing beyond their own limitations. What are you proposing? Asked Chancellor Moravec of the United Planets Federation, speaking for one of the galaxy's largest multi-species alliances. Sarah's expression grew serious. I'm proposing that we establish a new framework for galactic civilization, one based on shared knowledge and cooperative evolution rather than territorial competition and resource accumulation. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Representatives throughout the chamber began shouting objections, their translation systems struggling to keep up with the overlapping voices of dozens of species expressing outrage, fear, and disbelief. Order! Admiral Thexkar's voice boomed across the chamber, surprising everyone by supporting Sarah's right to speak. The human has demonstrated capabilities that demand our attention. We will hear her proposal in full before passing judgment. Sarah nodded gratefully to the Vorthak admiral before continuing. The architect knowledge includes detailed specifications for consciousness transfer systems, dimensional manipulation technology, and energy sources that make your most advanced power systems look primitive. This technology could eliminate scarcity and resource-based conflicts and allow every species in the galaxy to develop according to their full potential. And you would share this freely? Asked Representative Kexthul of the Traders Consortium, suspicion evident in his metallic voice. Knowledge shared multiplies, Sarah replied. Knowledge hoarded stagnates. The architects learned this lesson millions of years ago, which is why they transcended physical existence entirely. They left these testing sites not to create new masters, but to identify species capable of becoming teachers. The chamber buzzed with discussion as representatives consulted with their governments through quantum communication links. The offer Sarah was making was unprecedented in galactic history, a species with overwhelming technological superiority, offering to share rather than dominate. There must be conditions, Chancellor Moravec observed. No species grants such power without expecting something in return. Only one condition, Sarah confirmed. Any species that receives architect knowledge must commit to the principle of cooperative evolution. No more wars of conquest, no more suppression of developing civilizations, no more hoarding of resources that could benefit all consciousness. Representative Zixara's crystalline form shifted into patterns indicating deep skepticism. And if species refuse to accept this condition? Sarah's expression remained serene, but something in her eyes reminded the assembly that humanity now wielded technology capable of reshaping star systems. Then they continue as they are, trapped in cycles of competition and stagnation, while the rest of the galaxy evolves beyond their comprehension. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected voice. Chancellor Moravec stood slowly, his expression thoughtful. The United Planets Federation has struggled for centuries to balance the competing interests of our member species. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach. One by one, other representatives began to speak. Not all were supportive. Several species declared their intention to reject any cooperation with humanity and withdrew from the proceedings. But enough remained to form the foundation of something new. This will not be easy, Admiral Thexkar observed as the formal negotiations began. My people have been warriors for 10,000 years. Teaching them to see cooperation as strength will require time. All evolution requires time, Sarah replied. The important thing is to begin. 3 hours later, the Galactic Cooperation Accord was signed by representatives of 73 species, establishing the framework for the first truly collaborative interstellar civilization in galactic history. It wasn't universal. Nearly a third of galactic powers had refused to participate, preferring to maintain their traditional competitive structures. But it was a beginning. As the ceremony concluded and representatives dispersed to their ships, Kozak approached Sarah at the central podium. Human, Sarah, I must ask.